Amen, church. Good to be with you guys. Man, a fun night for us and a really fun season to begin here as we continue our mountain series. And if you've not been with us, or if this is your first time here, and I know I met a few of you, and I know some of you are here for the first time tonight, just checking things out. We just want to say welcome and catch you up a little on where we've been. What we've been doing is walking through a little bit of one of Jesus's, maybe the most famous sermon that Jesus ever gave. And so we've been spending a number of weeks just kind of walking through, looking at it part by part. And tonight we'll continue that. And I think tonight's a helpful night to look at this particular sermon, given the things that are going on in our world, and really the things that will be going on in our world this week specifically, and Tuesday even more specifically. And so if you are completely clueless on what's going on, this Tuesday is a significant day in our country, in our nation, as Americans go to vote. And we'll be voting for a number of things, but obviously the most significant of those is who will be the next president. And so here's what I just point out. What I want to point out is that for high school students specifically, really the presidential election is kind of this weird thing where you're old enough, most of you, old enough to sort of look at it and have opinions on it and think about it, but most of you aren't old enough to actually go do anything about it, meaning you can't vote. And so here's what I just want to say as we go into this election, as you're kind of watching, as you're thinking about it, listen, here's what I know. Some of you really deeply care about the election. Some of you just completely don't care about the election. Others of you aren't aware there's an election going on, and you're just sort of navigating, you're like, what? And so wherever you're at tonight, I just want to say two things about the election. Two things. And these things would be for you if you are here and you consider yourself a Christian. These are true if you don't consider yourself a Christian, but you just kind of want to know what we think about it. Here's what I'll say, and I promise you it's not going to be controversial. First thing is this. That elections are significant. They matter. They're important. Like, one of the things in our country that is so beautiful and incredible is we don't have monarchies, we don't have kings, we don't have people who are just in charge and there's nothing you can do about it. We vote in this country. It's a beautiful thing. And one of the things I'm most glad to be is an American, and to have that right to vote is an amazing thing. And so if you're 18 in this room, and if you did the hard work of registering, we want you to vote this Tuesday. We want you to go out and do that. And then whenever you do turn 18, we want you to eventually vote. So we want to say that voting, that the democratic process of actually going out and voting is significant. Now here's the thing you're not hearing me say. I'm not saying it's so important that you vote for a particular party. And that's one of the things I just always want to make real clear in this space, that we kind of already have our guy, and it's Jesus, and his seat isn't up for election. Anything else sort of goes within that, right? So there's people in this room who are Republicans, there's Democrats, there's those of you that just have no idea what you are. Like, there's all over the map in this room, and here's what I want you to hear so clearly from me. Everyone here is welcome. No matter what political party you support, no matter what people you support, no matter who you would vote for if you could vote for someone, we want you to know that this church is built around not a political party and not a candidate and not an office and not a law, and not even a nation, but this church is built around Jesus and Jesus alone. So the first thing I want to say is that voting is significant, but I guess the second thing I'd say is it's not ultimate. It's not ultimate. Like, if you're like me, you just kind of watch some of what goes on in our country and some of the candidates and some of what's happening, you just kind of go like, how is this, like, what is our nation, like, what is even happening in our world, and how is this so messy? And if you're not careful, you can slip into this kind of despair. But what I'm saying is that elections are significant, they're just not ultimate. And when I say they're not ultimate is this, that God's still in charge. No matter who wins Tuesday, God's got this thing. God's not sitting in heaven like wondering who Iowa's going to vote for. He's not like concerned about, oh goodness, I wonder how this state will swing. God's not sweating it right now, guys. He's got this thing. And wherever it lands, wherever things go, God is completely in charge. He's completely sovereign. He's the king above all kings, and he is the king above all presidents, and all things are under his control. So as I walk into this Tuesday, I go, man, this is significant, it matters, but it's not ultimate. Because ultimately, my God still sits on the throne. And the reason I think that's significant to talk about tonight is because we're going to begin looking at something Jesus talks about. And what Jesus is going to talk about is going to kind of come into conflicts with some of the things that you might even hear politicians talking about, that you might hear people talking about, that might come into conflict with some of the things that seem foundational to American culture. And so while I'll say I love my country, not everything our country does and says and believes is necessarily biblical. In fact, a lot of times it's going to come into conflict with the Bible. And tonight, I think the Bible comes into conflict with one of the core beliefs, one of the core tenets of maybe what it means to be an American for some people, what it means to be alive for some people, what it means to be happy for some people. And that thing it's going to come into conflict with is this notion of the American dream. And so here's what I want to do tonight. I want to just present to you why I think this may come in conflict a little with this about, and just show you maybe a different way of living that might lead to a different result. And so I just want to present this before you see what you might have to say about this. So here's Matthew chapter 6, and we'll start in verse 19 here. It says, "Do not store up for yourselves treasures on earth." So again, this is Jesus talking. He's talking to this crowd of rich people and poor people, of city folk and rural folk. He's talking to people who are super religious and people who have never been to church in their entire life. He's talking to this whole crowd that I've said for weeks and weeks and weeks is just like this crowd. Like some of you come from very rich homes, some of you come from very poor homes. Some of you come from very religious homes, some of you come from very non-religious homes. We're all over the map in here. And Jesus looks at this crowd and he says to them, "Do not store up for yourselves treasures on earth." And here's what I said. I said that this comes into conflict with something that here in America we call the American dream. And the American dream, simply put, kind of the stereotype of the American dream is that your job in life, if you want to be happy, if you want to be satisfied with your life, is to accomplish more, accumulate more, is to get more, is to ultimately gain more for yourself and for your family, and then you will be happy. And what I want to say at the very front is this, that I don't think Jesus is against you owning stuff. I don't think Jesus is against you having money. In fact, I don't even think Jesus is against money. I don't think Jesus hates rich people. I don't think Jesus wants you to sell all your stuff and live in a cave somewhere and call yourself a Christian. Like, I don't think that's what Jesus is calling us toward here. But I do think Jesus wants to challenge us. I do think Jesus says this because he wants to challenge our thinking on something. And so one of the things I've tried to lay before you for years and years and years, and if you've been in high school ministry for any amount of time, you've probably seen me do this before, but one of the things that can really quickly happen for high school students reading this is you go, "Don't store up for yourself treasures on earth," okay? And you go, "Well, I'm in high school and I'm broke, so I'm good." Like this is what happens. It's kind of like, well, I don't struggle with money because I don't really have enough to even buy like Chipotle after, so I'm set. And that's what we kind of do. So we kind of check off that box and we move on. But then here's what I've tried to say. That if you have built your life out, and you've seen me do this before, over this idea that I just need to get really good grades in high school. Because if I get really good grades in high school, I'll get into a really good college. And if I get into a really good college, I'll get into a really good grad school. And if I get a good grad school, I'll get into a good job. And of course, if I get a good job, I'll make a lot of money. And if I get a lot of money, then that girl will finally notice me. And if that girl or guy finally notices me, well, then I can get married and have kids and buy a car and buy a house and then retire and golf for 5 years and die. Like, that is the agenda for some of you. Like, this is bins for some of you. You don't even realize that this is how you've been living your life. Like, you have this 60-year plan set out where the entire goal is being old and golfing. Like, and I'm just saying to you, when Jesus says, "Don't store up for yourself treasures on earth," he's saying don't live the type of life where everything's about accumulating the next thing and the next degree and the next job and the next spouse and the next child and the next car and the next house. Some of you have actually begun to set up your lives in such a way where you are just living for the next thing, thinking that if you get into the right college, it'll actually make you happy. I'm just here to say, in echoing Jesus, that that's never going to happen. That Jesus stands before this crowd of humanity, this diverse crowd of humanity, and says, you getting that next thing that you think is going to make you happy, actually you just attain it, and then you want the next thing. You'll get into that right college, and then you want the job, and then you'll get the job, and you'll get the salary, and then you want a higher salary, and a nicer car, and more kids, and a better life, and a better thing, and it just goes on and on and on and on. And one of the things I want to constantly plead with you, church, one of the things I just want to constantly plead with you is to not live your life in such a way that you think the next thing in your life is the thing that's going to satisfy your soul. Because it won't. And Jesus looks at this crowd just like you guys and says, don't store up for yourself treasures in heaven. Here's how he completes the sentence. He says, don't store up for yourself treasures on earth, he says, where moth and rust destroy and where thieves break in and steal. He says, don't store up for yourself treasures on earth where moth and rust and vermin destroy and where thieves break in and steal. And so Jesus is looking at them and he's going, listen, the reason I don't want you to, there's a reason he doesn't want you to build up treasures on earth. There's a reason this whole pattern of, I'm just going to get to the next thing, and when I get the next thing, I'll be happy, and then I'll move on to the next thing. There's a reason that doesn't satisfy. And here's Jesus' reason. It's real simple. Everything you own will one day be in a trash heap. Like everything you own will either be taken from you or one day you will throw it away. Like everything you think is cool, everything you think is a sign of how wealthy or well off or well doing you are, everything is going to end up in a trash heap or be taken from you. And so like some of you, and I don't want to jump up and down on this, but like some of you are like, I had to get the new iPhone 7 because it's like the thing and I've got to have it. And so you waited in line and you got it and you spent like $400,000 and it's yours and you own it now. And it's great, but then here's the thing, I was just online yesterday and they're starting to say like leaks of the new features of the iPhone 8 are coming out. And so already your phone's like old news. And like you're just going like, I just bought this thing and it's the most important thing ever. And you're like, I just got this thing because it was so awesome. And there's going to come a day not so long from now that it's in a trash heap somewhere. Or in your drawer because you don't really know what to do with old phones, so you just have a drawer full of them. Like, I don't know what it is for you, but there's coming a day where everything you value, all of the stuff you have, ends up in a trash heap. And maybe you're like, oh man, phones, that's not my thing. My phone's a few versions older, I'm not into that. Okay, let's talk clothes for a second. You ever open up a photo album and look at a picture of yourself from 6th grade? Right? Like you thought you were so fresh and so fly back in 6th grade, you're like, oh, look at this, and then you look back and you're like, what is wrong with me? You know, you ever had that moment where you're like, what is going on? Why do I look so ridiculous? Here's why. Here's why. Because everything you own, no matter how cool it is, no matter how awesome it is, no matter how up to date or in fashion it is, some of you are really stressing out over the 6th grade photo album thing. No matter how amazing and incredible the things you have, there will come a day where it is out of date, out of fashion, out of style, and it will end up in the trash can. It will end up in a garbage heap. Everything you own will one day end up either being taken from you or in a garbage heap. And so Jesus is going, why are you wasting your life trying to get this stuff? Like again, Jesus is against stuff, and we're not against stuff either. If you have an iPhone 7, awesome. If you have the most cool, hip clothes, like tell me how to dress better. I don't know, like that's cool, and we're happy with that. And we're really not like that. Jesus is not saying don't own cool stuff. Jesus is not saying never have a nice thing. But Jesus is saying if you build out your whole life around getting nice things, you'll never actually be satisfied. You'll always need more. That's what he's trying to say here. He goes on to say this. He says, but store up for yourselves treasures in heaven, where moths and vermin do not destroy, and where thieves do not break in and steal. Jesus is saying you can build up treasure on this earth, and listen, you'll be not satisfied, not satisfied, not satisfied, and then even if you accumulate all this massive amount of stuff, there comes a day when you die and you don't get to take it with you. Jesus says, what if instead you built up for yourself treasures in heaven? And when he says treasures in heaven, he's not talking about like some sort of cool like token or ticket system Jesus has. Where like, you're cool, so here's some tokens. Like that's not what Jesus is saying here. Here's what he's saying. He's saying value, treasure, the only two things that matter in heaven. And I'm just going to let you in on a secret from the Bible. There's only two things that matter in heaven. There's only two things that are ultimately treasured in heaven. And that's the glory of God and people. For all of eternity, the only two things that God treasures, wants, desires more than anything else is for you to worship and honor and glorify Him. That's one. And the second is for people to know Him. It's the glory of God and it's people. And so what Jesus is saying is, what if you built your life not around accumulating stuff, but instead living to the glory of God and living so that more people might end up in heaven? You see, because if you are the type of person who lives so that more people might end up in heaven, you will see people in heaven, and that will be the treasure that you will treasure, not just for the 50, 60, 70, 80 years you live on this earth, but for eternity. Let me talk to you about it this way. Let me show you this picture. You'll see here a great JD who looks kind of...
Oh, yeah.
Like, here's JD. Yeah, very exciting. Let me tell you the story. You got JD here, and if you don't know, and some of you are new to our church, this is JD Lasky. JD is one of our staff members here at the church. He's been on staff for approximately 200 years. And he is, his job is to meet with people. His job is to minister to people. JD, for many of you, you would say, man, JD has been there during key moments of my life. And even those of you who don't know JD, you maybe interacted with him or seen him around, he is a guy who has been an enormous influence on this church, on this area, on your schools. He is on most of your campuses, at least one day a week. He's just an incredible man of God doing some incredible things. But then let me tell you the story of the lady sitting next to him. Like this lady sitting next to him is this lady who there was nothing crazy special about her. And here's what I mean by that. She wasn't a celebrity. She wasn't some big deal. She wasn't like some pastor at this church like where JD managed. She was like this big deal in his life. She was just this. Here's what this lady was. This lady was a Sunday school teacher. This lady was a Sunday school teacher years and years and years ago at Calvary. And she's teaching elementary school age kids. And she's teaching these kids about Jesus. And she's teaching them the Bible, just the very basics. And in fact, it's what some of you do. There's some people in this room right now who every Sunday morning they're teaching people about the Bible. They're teaching elementary school kids about the Bible. And this is what this lady does. And JD comes in as an elementary school kid, and JD has shared this in different venues and in different places, so I think I can share this. So when he was in elementary school, when he's a kid, his parents started going through a divorce. And JD's caught in the middle of this, and some of you know exactly what that's like, to just kind of be caught in the middle of this divorce, this messy situation. And then JD comes into church, and this lady just meets him and befriends him and walks with him. And ultimately, this is the lady who leads JD to Christ. And so I think about this, and I think about the impact JD Lasky has made on not just a few people, but on hundreds, possibly even thousands of people. And I look at this lady, and I look at her life, and I just go, praise Christ that she didn't value treasures and stuff over people. Praise God, like I'm so grateful because of my friendship with JD and the impact he's even made on my life. I am so grateful for this lady that she valued people over stuff. That she didn't build her life around getting more things and being more wealthy and being more successful and famous and well-known, but that she simply built her life around the only thing that will matter for eternity. And that's the glory of God and its people. And so when Jesus says to you, store up for yourself treasures in heaven, I hope every single one of you who considers yourself a Christian in this room would just go, okay, you know, I can build my life around getting more stuff and being more successful and having more money and having more opportunities and having more experiences, or I can build my life around people. What if, for the rest of your high school career, and for some of you that's like 7 months, and for some of you that's years and years and years left, what if, for the rest of high school, you decided that your legacy wasn't going to be having nicer clothes or having nicer stuff or being a more popular person? What if you just decided all of that was nonsense that'll be taken from you anyway, and you just decided to invest in the only thing that lasts for eternity, and that's people? Maybe you never thought of it that way, that people are the only immortal creation that God made, that God creates everything, and ultimately the only things that make it into eternity are people. And so that you have to decide, what if the rest of high school was just about reaching people for Jesus? What if the rest of high school was about just inviting more people to be a part of this church? What if the rest of your high school career was about loving people when they're hurting, and praying for people when they're crying, and serving people when they need help, and calling people when they need a friend? What if you decided to invest in the only thing that matters for eternity? And that's people. Jesus says, don't store up for yourself treasures on earth. All of those things are going to go away from you, but store up for yourself treasures in heaven, because it's the only thing that lasts forever. And here's this lady named Muriel, who when JD is an elementary school teacher, or when JD's an elementary school kid, she's an elementary Sunday school teacher, and she leads this guy to Christ, and that has impacted eternity in countless ways. What if that was you? What if that was you before you graduated high school? What if that was you before you went off and became an adult? Don't you dare buy into the lie that you'll never do anything significant for Christ or significant in this world until you're an adult and have a bunch of money. You can make a difference for eternity in someone's life now. And Jesus continues this way. He's going to say in verse 21, he says, where your treasure is, there your heart will be also. So this is a significant thing that Jesus says, and we've actually used this verse in a number of different sermons and teachings over the years, because we really think this is a significant part, not only of the way you view money and possessions and stuff, but really the way you view everything. Because Jesus doesn't say here, notice he doesn't change it. Notice how it's flipped from our thinking. Usually we think, okay, whatever your heart feels, like whatever you love, that's where you'll give money to or spend money to or invest resources. And that's what we tend to think. We tend to think, because I love this, I'm going to put my life's energy and work and money toward it. But actually it's a different way. It's the opposite way. Jesus says where your treasure is, there's where your heart's going to be. In other words, your heart follows your treasure. And so here's why this matters to us. Because this is not just a sermon about, like, don't be a greedy person. This isn't just a sermon about don't live your life just for money. Ultimately, this is a sermon about your heart. It's a sermon about your worship. It's a sermon about the way you see the whole world, the way you see God, and the way you honor Him. Because if you're someone who lives your life just trying to accumulate more stuff, more possessions, more money, more fame, more things for yourself, ultimately that's going to lead your heart down a very dark and terrible road. Like, honestly, the most miserable people you know in your life are often the most selfish people. And I'm not saying this just to knock people. What I'm trying to say is ultimately when you go down this road that everything is about accumulating more stuff for you, that never leads toward happiness. It just never does. Long term, that leads toward misery. And what Jesus is trying to say is that if instead of putting your treasures here on earth, you put your treasure in heaven and you live for other people and you live for their joy, to serve them and to love them and to share Christ with them. Jesus is saying if that's where you put your treasure, your heart will follow. So that ultimately, this is not a sermon about money. It's a sermon about your heart. It's a sermon about your life. It's a sermon about what kind of person you're going to be. It's a sermon about what kind of heart you're going to have, whether you're going to worship God and trust Him and love Him with everything and experience the joy that comes from that, or whether you will be the type of person who pursues money thinking that's going to be the thing that makes you happy, and it will lead down the road of misery. Here's how Jesus continues. He says, the eye is the lamp of the body. So he uses this metaphor. He says the eye is the lamp of the body. He says if your eyes are healthy, your whole body will be full of light. In other words, you'll be able to see things. And then he says, but if your eyes are unhealthy, your whole body will be full of darkness. So in other words, if your eyes don't work, you don't get to see anything. He says, if then the light within you is darkness, how great is that darkness? So what Jesus is trying to say here with this metaphor is that if you're the type of person who doesn't see money and possessions and stuff properly, you will ultimately lead down the road toward darkness. But when you can see it properly, it will lead you down the road toward light. He's trying to say if you're the type of person who sees money in the way that, frankly, most people see money, where it's just if I get more of it, I'll be happy, it leads you down a miserable road. But if you can start to see money properly and say that money is okay, money is fine, we're not against money, we're not against possessions, but the primary thing in my life that I'm trying to get isn't money. The primary thing I'm trying to get to is God. When you start to see it that way, it leads you toward light. So one of the things I did a couple months ago is I was preaching here about money, and I showed you this little calculator where it showed kind of the percentage of people in the world. And here's what we like to think. All of us like to think we're kind of like average in terms of the money, but when we actually show ourselves in comparison to the rest of the world, we were in the 99.4 percentile. Like 99.4% of the world has less money, has less possessions, has less stuff than the average person in our community, the average family in this community, the average person in this room. And here was my question. My question was, do you think this community of Westlake Village, Thousand Oaks, Conejo Valley, like this area, do you think we are in the top 0.06% of happy people in the world? And the response from everyone was a resounding no. Like, we have more money than 99% of the world, but we are not even close to the top 1% when it comes to happiness, which proves to me, once again, that money does not bring you happiness. It just doesn't have that ability. And here's what Jesus is saying with this metaphor. He says, if you can see that, if you have the ability to just see that, and listen, some of you are here and you're just visiting and you're not even Christians. Can we just agree on something that even if you don't believe Jesus is the other option than money, that money just isn't the thing that's going to make you happy? That money just isn't the thing that has the capacity to bring deep satisfaction to your soul? Like, you don't even have to believe in God to look around at our super ridiculously wealthy community and go, wow, I don't think everyone here is like driving along the best day ever all the time, right? Like that's just not occurring. Because money in and of itself does not have the ability to make you happy. And Jesus is saying when you see that, you have the opportunity to see the light. And then here's how Jesus finishes. I want you to catch this last verse. He says, no one. He says, no one can serve two masters. Either you will love the one and hate the other, or you will be devoted to one and despise the other. You cannot serve both God and money. And so what Jesus simply puts before you is a decision. And the decision can't be, well, I'm going to be a Christian who tries to get as rich as I can because I just want money and I want to be a Christian. No. Jesus says, no, you have to choose. Like, you can be a Christian who becomes very rich, and listen, there's Christians at this church who have a ton of money, and they are good men and women, but they didn't make it their life's goal just to gain money for themselves. So I'm not saying it's a choice between money and Jesus, but I am saying you do have to choose which one you will pursue, because you can't pursue both. You can't pursue both because ultimately you can't trust both. You can't say, I'm a person who believes if I go get the right college degree and get the right job, I'll make enough money. If I make enough money, then I'll be safe and comfortable and good in this world. You can't say, I trust in the money, I'll make it a job someday, and I trust in God. You've got to choose. And my question for you tonight is, what's it going to be? Like, are you ultimately going to trust in money? Are you ultimately going to trust that you'll make enough money someday, and when you make enough money, then you'll be deeply satisfied and happy and all will be well with your life? Or are you simply going to trust God and say, God, listen, I don't know I don't know what kind of money I'm going to make, I don't know what's going to happen, I don't know where my life's going, but I believe you and trust you that wherever it happens, I'll be deeply satisfied because I have you. That's what this is about. This is about it's really not even about money as much as it's about your trust. Because money says if you have enough of me, you can control your world. And money says if you have enough of me, you can trust in the money. If you just get more money, well, money makes a promise to you. And money says if you get more money, if you accumulate more stuff, then you will be happy, you will be satisfied, and you will be safe in this world. And so if you're someone who chooses this route, if you walk out of here and say, forget God, I'm just going to go make a lot of money and that will make me happy, money is offering you a promise. And the promise is this. That if you make more of me, if you get more of me, if you accumulate more of me for yourself, you will be happy and satisfied in this world. But here's the only problem. Money is never delivered on that promise. Because it can't deliver on that promise. The people who just accumulate more and more and more and more money for themselves so that they can be happier and happier and happier and happier never end up happier. They always end up leading toward distraction. But then there's Jesus, who says, listen, get more of me, pursue me, follow after me, trust me in everything, trust me with your college acceptance letters, trust me with what job you're going to get in the future, trust me with whether or not you're going to get married and have kids, trust me with every single part of me, get more of me, more of Jesus, and here's the thing I believe about Jesus with all my heart, we sung it earlier, that his promises never fail. And that when Jesus promises us something, he always comes through on his promise. He's a promise maker and he's a promise keeper. And so when Jesus says, come get more of me and you'll receive all of the satisfaction and the joy and the peace that I have to offer, I believe him and I trust him. And every moment I'm tempted to trust that money is the thing that's going to satisfy my soul, I remember that it never actually has. And every time I make more money or get more money or accumulate more stuff, it actually just makes me want to get more stuff and more money and more status. But when I get more of Jesus, this amazing thing happens when I want more of him, but I'm deeply satisfied in my soul. So that's the question for you tonight. It's very simple. Jesus makes it very simple for us at the end here. He says you can't trust both God and money. You can't serve both God and money. So here's the question for the rest of your life. Are you going to trust God or money? Are you going to trust God or your ability to make money and get stuff in this world? Which one are you going to trust? Where are you going to put your faith? Ultimately, where are you going to feel safe? With your bank account or with Jesus? Your call. The band's going to come up right now and we're going to continue singing tonight. And I want to just read for you these lyrics. Because we rolled out this new song tonight, and maybe you think we just randomly pick songs off Spotify or something, but we picked them with some intentionality, knowing that the stuff we want to teach about is the stuff we want you to sing about, and it's the stuff you sing about that we ultimately start to believe, not just in our minds, but ultimately in our hearts. And so tonight we introduced a new song. We're just going to sing the chorus of it as we come out tonight. And here's what it's going to say. It says this. It says, now until forever, Jesus, I surrender. Show me what I don't know, more of you. I'm desperate for your presence, longing to be with you. Lead me to a new place, more of you. In just a moment, we're going to invite all of you to stand and sing these lyrics, this song tonight, where you just say, Jesus, I want more of you because I believe you satisfy. Maybe you're in this room and you honestly have gotten caught up in the, if I have nicer shoes or nicer clothes or a nicer phone or a nicer car or a nicer something, or if I get into the right college, then my soul will be satisfied. And tonight I just want to challenge some of you to repent of that and say, I'm done because that won't satisfy me. And Lord, I want more of you because I'm desperate for your presence. I'm longing to be with me. Lead me to a new place, Jesus. More of you. So that's my invitation to you tonight. If you're caught up in the better clothes, better shoes, better car, better laptop, better college, better whatever, thinking that's going to satisfy your soul, tonight's a night where I just want you to forsake that and abandon your control to King Jesus and say, Jesus, you're the one I want more than anything else. And if I don't get all that stuff, but I have you, that's enough for me and I will be satisfied. So I'm going to invite you right now, if you're in this room, just to close your eyes and bow your heads. And here's what I get. I get that it's hard in high school to say that money's an issue, that money's a struggle, that possessions are a struggle, because it seems like it shouldn't be a thing yet. But if you feel caught up in that web, that you want nicer stuff, nicer shoes, nicer phone, nicer car, better college, better job, you want more money, you want more stuff, more possessions, if you feel like that's a draw for you, if you feel like that's a temptation for you, maybe you feel like you've already been caught up in this weird cycle where you just need more and more and more and it hasn't satisfied you. I want to ask you just to do something brave tonight, and that's to acknowledge that that's you by simply being brave enough to open your eyes and look at me right now. That's you. There's people all over this room. And I get it. It's so tempting. Like the reason Jesus had to talk about this 2,000 years ago is because it was a temptation then, and it's a temptation now. It's this struggle to think that more stuff will make us happy, and I just want to say to you that I get it. I've been there. I know it. And I promise it won't satisfy your soul. But I promise you that Jesus will. That Jesus gives you something that no one in this world and nothing in this universe can take away from you, and that is peace and joy forevermore. So if that's you right now, I just want to pray for you, and for the rest of us, I just want to pray for us that as we stand and sing, we would just say, Jesus, I want more of you, more of you, more of you. And that would do something in your heart that nothing can touch. So Jesus Christ, thanks for tonight. Thanks for this church. God, thanks for your words spoken thousands of years ago. God, may we just not be a people who pursue stuff over you. God, help us in those moments that we just want things and we just want to be cool and we just want to be fashionable and we just want to have better stuff and we just think that's going to make us happy. God, help us in those moments to just believe that you've got us. And God, help us to believe that when your promises come through, we will have joy and peace that no one in this world can touch. So Lord, as we sing to you right now, I pray for those who open their eyes tonight, that this would embolden their hearts, that it would give them faith, that it would give them confidence, that you, Lord, are willing to pay the highest price to have us, that we might have joy and peace forevermore. And so Lord Jesus, be honored as we sing right now. We pray in your name, and everyone said,